Okay. There we go. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this informational meeting for the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Operations Recruitment. We have a packed agenda for today. We have an hour, so I'll make sure that we move through our items, but feel free to interact with us and ask questions as we go. You can either raise your hand and let us know you have a question, or you can enter your question in the chat and I'll read it for you. Okay, some of the items that we're going to be discussing today is we're going to start with introductions, and then we're going to have Seth talk about the vision for the position, the skills and experience needed for the position. What does the day-to-day look like? What makes this role exciting? He's also going to touch on any onboarding and training plan for this position, and also the work schedule and any required travel that you might need to do. And then once we're done with all of that, we'll leave some time to discuss our application process on how we're going to select applicants for interviews. We're also going to discuss how many rounds of interviews we're going to be holding and with dates. And so again, I'm going to ask you to put your questions in the chat or raise your hand if you have
Hang in there a
questions.
second. Teresa's internet was, you broke up a little bit there, Teresa, at the end.
All right, I am so sorry. Let me see. Can you hear me better, Seth?
Yeah, you sound good now, so.
Okay, perfect. I'll keep an eye. I might need to switch to my hotspot, but I was saying that we will leave time at the end to go over the rounds of interviews that we're going to be holding with dates. Feel free to interact and ask questions. Raise your hand, put them in the chat. Okay, but with that said, let's go ahead and start with the introduction set, and I'll start and I'll pass it over to you. So thank you for being here, everyone. My name is Teresa Camacho. I'm an executive recruiter, and my pronouns are she, her. I welcome you to this space. I'm going to be the facilitator today. Seth?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Seth Lyon. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Oregon Department of Human Services. And that's a position that not only oversees, well, I'll talk about the position in just a minute, programs for Oregon Department of Human Services, but also for the Oregon Health Authority. We manage a number of shared services that manage also the Oregon Health Authority. And I'm a hiring manager for this position. So nice to see everybody.
Thank
And
you,
Maria
Seth.
did just join, so we can
Yeah, she did.
do an introduction.
Maria, you're next for an introduction. Glad you made it.
Perfect timing. I planned that. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Ross. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I am the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Strategy and Implementation, working alongside Seth and whomever has this role in a couple months, hopefully.
So let's have Savannah. Savannah, I see you're here too. So why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Good afternoon, Savannah Dershawn, Business Operations Manager for the COO. I report to Maria and I oversee a project management team. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Savannah and Maria. Was there anyone else, Seth?
No, I think we can jump in.
Okay, perfect. Well, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. I want to start with a little bit of vision for the position. The Chief Operating Office, I'll talk briefly about that and then about where the position fits in. And then we'll talk about the vision for it as a member of the executive team for the COO. So as I mentioned, we are a key part of the Director's Office of Oregon Department of Human Services, which, if you don't know, is the largest department in state government. We represent about 25% of the state of Oregon employee workforce. Have about a $23 billion budget. So we are a pretty sizable operation, and Oregon Health Authority is also one of the largest departments in the state. So in addition to what I'll describe for the ODHS work, we manage about a dozen shared services program, or 15, I think, shared services programs that are administrative in nature and also manage for the Oregon Health Authority. The way we have structured the Chief Operating Office is that we have an arm for strategy and implementation that Maria is the deputy for. So that, for there, we manage the department's strategic plans, strategic initiatives, all of our executive project management, and implementation of major initiatives across the department. And then on the other side of the office with this deputy, it's helping me manage what's about 17 different programs. Again, most of them are shared services managing with Oregon Health Authority. Some are central services that just support the Oregon Department of Human Services. Again, generally administrative in nature. I'll give a couple examples. We have a very large background check unit. We do background checks for those serving vulnerable populations across the state. We do contracts. We do about 8,000 contracts in procurement, totaling about $12 billion. So we have a team that does that for both departments. Public records unit, legal cases, facilities for both departments, a number, and I'm happy to ask and answer any specific questions, but those types of services supporting the department. So we like to say we've got our two major initiatives, strategy and implementation, and then overseeing operations, and then lots of other duties assigned because we're such a large agency with large programs that have program directors and their teams. When an initiative or a crisis or anything requires, audit response is another great example. Work across a number of the programs, the COO will often take lead in that. So that could be Maria, that could be this position, that could be me, it could be Savannah, or others on our team. So, given that structure, the vision for this position is someone who really excels at business operations, modern business effectiveness, efficiency, customer service, and a strong focus on equity. We say as our top line mission that we really serve those who serve the people in Oregon. So, we in Oregon Department of Human Services have about 9,000 staff who do some version of direct services. So, we have the staff that are providing a facility for them and a contract for services that they need, and all the infrastructure type things so that they can do their job. So customer service focus, we're looking for a lot of nimble skills with data. How do we take a lot of data and tell the important story, and help translate that story to those who don't do the work but need to know how are things working? How do I get good customer service? And really tell that story, and really kind of translate into a larger performance management system that the agency is using. And then the other shared service, we manage all of the shared services for the two departments except for Office of Information Services, which commonly would be known as IT in most places. All of the computer and information technology work is a very large area that is operated out of the Oregon Health Authority, but this role is going to help me sit in governance spaces to oversee huge technology projects and huge initiatives in that area. So really looking for a great leader that can be a great part of the team with Maria and Savannah and me on the executive team, who is someone who can really manage through data and tell that story very professionally and support us around business efficiency and in that information technology space is where I would start. Maria, would you fill anything in from there?
I mean, that was pretty comprehensive stuff. I think what I would add is, as far as impact, we're talking between ODHS and OHA, we're talking about 17,000 staff, give or take, and 1 in 3 people in Oregon who are receiving at least one of the services that we provide. So as far as impact, it's pretty significant. And so operationally, ensuring that we're able to partner to ensure that there's consistency when something happens in an office, or that we're thinking about IT through a strategic lens. I just came from another meeting on a transformation project, and every single meeting that I've had this week on this project, there has been a technology question. How can it be better? How are you thinking about this differently? So this is really our person that gets to partner both with programs and with our IT partners to think about that more holistically, because everybody else is thinking about their piece of the pie. So that is a big part of our role. And that's generally our role in a lot of places around customer service, anything around safety, where a program has more of a narrow view, and we're really coming in and bringing everyone to the table and thinking more collectively about how we can create solutions and be proactive as we can about how we move the agency forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Today, so you want me to just keep going through the agenda?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Yes.
So I think I covered sort of vision and for the position and skills for the position. Next, I want to talk a little bit. What does the day-to-day look like? Well, it looks a lot like this. There's a lot. There are a lot of virtual meetings. We do have a few in-person meetings, but we have generally made the move that so many have after the pandemic and take advantage of technology, which means a very packed schedule. Um, they're busy days. It looks like this kind of back to back with emails and instant messages on Microsoft Teams coming in pretty steadily as well. So being comfortable with a very busy schedule that can be disrupted at a moment's notice, but also be planful and keep the big picture moving is really important for the day to day. Specifically, the position will manage some of our programs that are, maybe even a single person manages the program because they're smaller, to the administrators of probably a half dozen programs that have anything from 40 to 200 staff. So it'll be sort of 10-ish direct reports probably. And so, all of the performance management, helping out with HR things, budget, managing positions, all of those kinds of things, both for the units that are directly under the org chart, but also in a shared model with Maria and I, taking on kind of whole areas for the entire office, even if it's offices, it includes offices that report to me. So it'll be very much a executive team sharing the work, with Myriad tending to take the lead on strategy and implementation, and this position tending to take the lead on things that are operational, but all of us being able to fill in with each other at a moment, on any given day. It'll include a presentation at the legislature. It'll include some planning around media, for sure, some crisis management. We need this data right away, kind of thing. Obviously, we're a high-profile agency, so we have a whole team of communications folks and a press secretary that are fielding all of those things. So, being up for that, as well as being in the 2-year state budget cycle, which kind of never stops. Where pretty soon we're going to be into implementation, and before we barely implement, we start thinking about what's going to happen in the next session in 2 years, as well as the intermediate session. So a lot of the interaction with the legislature, and so it's going to be a lot of screen time, a lot of busyness, and a lot of, I try not to say multitasking, because I think it's a falsehood that we think we can do more than one thing at once, but trying to hop around from things and being comfortable with chaos, um, and trying to help organize it. And I think, the job in general, I think the bulk of the work is going to be in the sort of 8 to 5-ish range. And when it's not, and we just serve at the pleasure. So, like, I think a comfort with something just happened and it's 5:10 and it's going to happen, or it happens on the weekend. We're a 24-hour operation, but I would say most I managed services in one of our counties and including the child welfare program. So I was much more 24/7 then. I think I'm much closer to 8 to 5 now, but a very packed 8 to 5 and extra when it's needed. Um, there will be probably minimal travel. I think you could work, most places in the state, but we will have in-person meetings. We'll have, we have 170 offices that we're responsible for. So there will be, in-state travel and, probably expected, a national conference here or there. So that would only be periodic, but, in-state travel, probably expect that on the average every week or two to have, either something at one of our offices, a tribal gathering at one of the tribal locations, etc. So there will be some travel, including overnight.
Seth, let's pause for a minute and just see if there are any questions so far. I don't see any questions in the chat, but do we
So can
have
I add
any?
one piece on the
Yes.
travel? I do think it's important to say we are very, very flexible. Some of the offices that report to this position do not have the privilege of working remotely. And it will go a long way to spend some time being in those spaces, getting to know them. I often say that we in central office can kind of be in an ivory tower. And any chance I get, when we can come out, it means so much to the staff.
Well
Thank
put.
you. Yeah, and I don't see any questions, Seth. Go ahead.
We'll make space just for a second. Any questions on any of that? I just shared a lot, so.
Hi, this is Kathy. I have a question. So I've been looking around at some of the other jobs on the state website for like the ODDS office, and I'm trying to learn. I not don't have a background with the state. I have private companies, but so I just was trying to decipher some of the terminologies of like a business operations administrator one versus say like another one is a business operations manager three. So you just mentioned that, well, this was an admin position, administration position, but then you said there's 10 direct reports, which isn't a problem. But I was just wondering if maybe you could help me, this decipher ring on what some of these manager versus administrator versus 1, 2, and 3 might mean. Is one higher than 3 or?
Um, I I will not pretend to be any more expert in our classification and compensation system than I have to be. But it is somewhat different than the private sector because we're in a statewide regulated system. So, but to answer your question more specifically, the manager series 1, 2, and 3, um, is then leads to a business operations administrator 1. So a manager 3 would be the next step before a business operations administrator 1, and that relates to the number of direct reports, the breadth and scope of the duties, the amount of money and decision making that you're responsible for. But typically, a manager 3 would report to a business operations administrator 1, and this position is that business operations administrator 1.
Okay.
Kathy, I'm going to drop the classification compensation website in the chat for you too.
Okay.
Without getting into too much detail, the number next to that, it will help you identify how high the classification is. So those are basically pay scales, and I'm not going to say any more than that because Dennis is here and I'll get it wrong. But that number basically tells you how high up it is, and because it's associated with a certain pay scale. So if you look at that to
Okay.
help compare, and this website will also give you minimum qualifications, and it'll show the difference between, a 1, 2, or 3, if you really want to get into the weeds with that. I don't know that you really want to. It's a very, very deep rabbit hole, but I'll put it in the chat if you really want to.
Yeah, and I the org chart you posted, thank you. I already had that printed out, doing some of my research, trying to, figure out where I fall in the, skills category, but we're going to give it a go and see what pans out.
Since you're coming not from our wonky government world, and I hope there are others too. I skimmed a little bit to see that we definitely have some folks who don't live in this. So let me just talk a little bit about salary. You'll see the salary range, but I think it's important to know up front when you're talking about a job at the state, we have a pay equity law. So unlike a private company where there might be a salary range, maybe even, that where you land within that range is negotiable, and maybe even pushing the range could be a negotiable. We are not allowed at all to negotiate salary anymore. So there's a centralized unit that reviews not previous salary, but previous years of experience in the specific skills for the position, and puts you in a step that's basically a 1 through 10. They're 5% steps. Typically, in my view, step 6, which you can see where those are in the website you've got, tends to be where someone external to the state with the most experience would come in, which means you're going to get 5% raises at 6 months, and then every year for the next 4 years, in addition to whatever cost of living. I see all that, not to scare anybody away, to make it just eyes wide open. A lot of times, we all want to look at that salary range and be like, I have a lot of experience, I'm going to negotiate the top of that salary range. And unfortunately, I don't get to negotiate. We used to be, we could sort of help appeal the pay equity. The law is the law. And so unfortunately, that's where it lands. So, the upside to working at the state is that you get you get sort of known raises over the course of the time, what's coming. And also you get incredible benefits, retirement, etc. But you don't get really a negotiable salary. It's based on experience, not previous salary, and that's an equity measure, because the disparities in different groups in populations out there, we know gender and race have impacted salaries. And so the pay equity law is designed to level off. Well, you've made this much money, but maybe that was based on some privilege. And so based on years of experience rather than previous salaries, how our law reads. And again, it's not me, it's not a department policy, it's a state law at this point. So
Thank you, Seth. And at the end of the information session, we will talk a little bit about what to include in your application material that could help you be selected for an interview and could help you obtain a higher salary step if it is that you have relevant experience for this position. All right, I see a hand raised, and then I do see also a question in the chat. So let's go to Mary Rose.
Yes, hi, thank you. And thank you for this great information. My name is Mary Rose Pachuco, and I was formerly Deputy Chief of Staff at the Department of Social and Health Services in Washington State. And this position sounds quite similar, and a lot of what you're saying, Seth, sounds very familiar to me. In particular, when you're talking about transformation of IT and being in that collaborative space in the meetings to make sure that we provide efficiency in our services and things of that nature. So thank you, that was very helpful. Diversity, equity, access, and inclusion is my most core value. And I did hear you talk about equity. And I also heard you talking about sometimes meeting with the tribes and attending some of their functions and their summits maybe, or meetings. That was a big part of my job as well. It was, our belief that developing those relationships was really important. And that our executive team needed to really forge those relationships and maintain those relationships. Is there a lot of that that would be is there a lot of that in this position as well? That is the relationships, maintaining those with the various tribes in the state of Oregon?
Yeah, let me answer a couple pieces of this and then see what Maria, I'm sure you can fill in some detail there. So on the equity side, we have what we call our Oregon Department of Human Services Equity North Star. And really, you know, we are, unapologetically unwilling to say we separate equity and inclusion from our work. We serve 1 in 3 Oregonians. In fact, it's getting closer to 4 in 10. And we have a responsibility to make sure that our service is equitable, that how you look and what your experience is doesn't determine the outcome of services. So that remains extremely critical to us. We're unapologetic about it being our top priority, regardless of other governments I won't refer to today, and changing priorities. And we also have a very strong ethic around partnership with the 9 other governments the 9 tribal sovereign nations that are federally recognized in Oregon, in the space that is called Oregon. They have their land, they have their sovereign nation. So we have a very strong government to government relationship. We have a tribal affairs director, and a team of tribal affairs. And we, at minimum, the primary contact is this office participates in a quarterly convening that's called the director's convening. It's 2 days, one focused on Oregon Department of Human Services, another focused across state departments, where we meet with the generally the health and human services leaders of tribes, and they take turns hosting us. And so we very much value those government to government relationships. We have tribal consultation policies at both agencies. So we issue Dear Tribal Leader letters, and sit down with the tribes. And, we very much hold that those are government to government relationships that's in addition to our equity work and our work with communities that are part of Oregon, for lack of a better way to put it. So huge value for us.
Great. I love to hear that.
All right. See, Mary Rose, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much, Seth.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Seth. All right.
Maria's just throwing resources in the chat. Look at this is amazing.
She's very, very good.
And again, we have those on speed dial, those resources.
All right. Here's a question from the chat said, are there intra-agency exchanges, jointly funded projects, programs with Medicare, HIV care, and treatment? Meaning, is it helpful to study and be familiar with how they work too?
I think, as we support the Oregon Health Authority, and I'll give it just a teeny, yeah, we're okay on time. I'll give a bit of history there, is that the Oregon Health Authority, that is which is our Medicaid agency. We use lots of Medicaid, but they're the Medicaid agency, the public health agency. Maria can do that better because she worked there for quite a number of years as well. So we support our language and our specific programs. So that's recording left. I clicked it back on. So I don't know if we're going to end up with 2 videos or not, but we should be good. Maria,
Yeah, I'm happy to, Seth. So as not need to know the
Right.
nuance of the program. What you need to know is when to call OHA and get them in the room. So you do need to know behavioral health, Medicaid, the generalities of public health and what might impact them. If you can get the right person in the room, that's all that's needed. But we do want to make sure that we identify those points, because it is so easy, especially in this virtual world, to forget folks that you just don't see that frequently. And boy, are they impacted by the decisions we make around shared services. There's so many examples, translation and publications. It all impacts them, and they have a number of emergencies on their side too. So it really does become, you also become a key liaison in ensuring that everybody's getting what they need to stay out of the news and to meet the needs of the communities who we serve too.
I apologize for that, Seth. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Okay, my internet is very, very
You're a
unstable.
little robotic, Teresa.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna turn off my camera for a minute, but you said you were hitting recording. You hit recording button? Okay. I think you said yes. Okay.
I did put it, it's recording again, so.
Okay, good, good. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully that will save, even if we end up with 2 recordings. Okay, sorry for interrupting and for stepping away. Do we need to go back to the agenda, or were you still answering questions?
Answered the most recent one, but happy to have folks ask more. I, just encourage you. This is a space to do it. In the interview process, we end up asking a lot of questions later.
Yeah.
So this is your front end chance.
Very good. While we wait for questions, do you want to touch a little bit about the remote part, hybrid, and office work? I know that it has been a hard question with some of our applicants reaching out.
I think I think there are a number of options. Since most of the lion's share of the work is done on a computer, um, we do a lot of remote work now. And we also have 170 offices, and you could, during remote work days, for example, I'm in one. I don't like to work at home anymore. I like home to be home and work to be work. So I work in an office, but I'm basically in a teleworking is the way I joke about it. So remote work is possible, I think. And we do have employees even out of state. I think the thing that I think everybody should know is that there will be expected in-person, meetings with tribes and at our buildings around the state. And we have also a state policy around compensation for travel where, your home the key work location is going to be in Salem, Oregon. And so if you have a meeting in Salem and you live elsewhere, you got to get yourself there. So I think that's the important thing to know, is that we can't compensate that as travel. That's considered commute in the state law. Um, so again, lots of remote work. It's possible to live in other places in Oregon and getting around is something you want to be able to plan for. Um, we provide equipment, and the other thing about remote work is you have to have stable internet wherever you are. Sorry, Chris, I don't mean to call you out there. um, we all have bad days. Maria was joking about the gremlins in Microsoft Teams earlier. So the gremlins have found their way to Zoom today.
Thank you, Seth. All right, it looks like Mary Rose has a question.
Thanks again. Sorry, I'm a question person. About the
You're
remote
asking
work,
somebody else is thinking it, so go ahead.
exactly. I live in Portland, an easy commute to Salem, but not one that you would necessarily want to do every day. But I agree with you, Seth. Sometimes, you want to keep home and work separate. Can one use one of the 170 other offices, if there are offices close by in Portland that has a cubicle, for example? Is that a possibility, getting to know that team and also working out of that office?
Absolutely. And you just described my situation. I live in Portland. I work at the closest office to my house that has space. I have a dedicated office here. And when I get up to, go heat something in the microwave, I get to see people doing direct service, which is really great for me to stay in touch with who we're really serving. We're serving those who serve directly, and I get to see those who we serve as well. So that's all entirely possible. And when we have cabinet meetings, we have in-person meetings in Salem, I do the drive, and it's much more fun in one direction than the other.
Very doable.
As
Thanks.
you know.
Yeah. I was going to Olympia. That was a little bit harder. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary Rose. There is a question, Seth. I think you're looking at it. Do you see that question in the chat?
Teresa, I'll read it. I want
Okay,
to let you rest
thank
your
you.
internet there.
Thank you.
I don't think she heard. Teresa, I'm going to read the question to let you rest your internet.
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
So it looks like Michael asked, the job announcement states that this. Okay. The job announcement states that this position leads the incorporation of modern. Okay. The job announcement states that this position leads the incorporation of modern best business practices into agency operations. Are this businesses practices that are highly visible that you can identify as priorities for this position? So I think we did send around an org chart. And Teresa, I think I gave one that had all the functional units that we have, right? So I would refer you to that rather than me trying to with 16 or 17 programs. I on a busy day, I often forget. I'm looking for the last one or two. So I think one of the things we really want this position to do is increase the visibility of these programs. They're all very public and very visible. So background checks let me just mention the background check unit for a moment. They do, gosh, I got to remember this, something like 10,000 background checks a month for everybody that's a home care worker, an elder agency, a child caring provider. So they do all of those background checks. So if somebody is authorized to work in a nursing home, for example, and they're waiting for their background check, that's going to become a big deal if they have delays. So their performance is constantly monitored, being asked about at the legislature. So contracts, facilities, all of these are highly visible, and I think we haven't done the best job of really making them to internal and external customers, making it known what our level of customer service is. And we want to do better at that. I'll also mention all of the shared services programs. Both departments contribute to a shared services budget, and there's a shared services budget committee that's co-managed between the organizations. So that group manages the sort of everything that's put into the kitty to manage these programs. And then all of the shared services programs are then chartered with a service level agreement to shared services budget. So we'll get a background check to you within this number of days and all of those kinds of things. We'll keep the facilities maintained. We'll get a contract with this within this many days. So all of that is situated. I think we want to modernize and continue to improve that. Michael, let me know if that was your what you were looking for, or if you want anything more.
I can add a couple of specifics too, if it's helpful. Like I can,
Yeah, and there's
my
also a question about the customer service policy, so maybe after that
no.
we could segue into that.
Yeah. Okay. So, my work is more on the project side, and this is where we really where myself and this other position really intersect. So I can give you a couple. One is a rules project. Luckily, we were able to get ahead of this one. We'd initiated a project alongside OHA to create more visibility and standardization around rules that were in process across both agencies. Well, now our state enterprise has set down an expectation that all agencies are to do that. So it is our job to ensure that that project keeps going in alignment with governor's expectations and the DAS enterprise. We also have another project where there was a legislative action around language access and accessibility that directly affects our publications and creative services unit, but also requires heavy partnership with our Office of Equity and Multicultural Services. And this is not a big deal until it is a big deal. We got an extension on our customer service policy because of the size of our organizations and the amount of direct service that we have. So we are in the draft process for that right now, and we'll have a final version, I think, in fall with implementation by the end of the year. So that will certainly affect a number of things, and that this role will definitely have a role in that. So I appreciate you lifting that up, but we do not yet quite have what you are looking for. I will give you a teaser that we're also standardizing the signature block too, which people are going to just love, I'm sure of it.
Thank you, Maria. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
That's
Wow.
better. So let's just hang in there.
Yes, this is the worst day for what my Wi-Fi. I apologize for that. It has never been this bad. Um, I'm looking at the agenda set. I don't see any more questions in the chat, but I am looking at the agenda. And there was one thing maybe that we can touch on. I don't know if you talked about the onboarding or what kind of training this role will have.
So, I just want to make it, I want to make one thing, clear is that we're really looking for the right person with the right attributes and the right skill set and experience. And depending upon whether you've done similar roles in state government, a lot of the things we're saying are going to make sense. And if you haven't, a lot of the things we've said today will not. And we really want to be generous with our onboarding. It's a complicated job and a complicated set of organizations. And so, the biggest thing around onboarding is just meeting people and developing relationships. And there are a lot. Obviously, we're 17, combined, so we're supporting 17,000 employees. And so, I we're really comfortable with the idea of getting the best person and then onboarding them appropriately and letting the time to understand the systems we have, and all the people. So it'd be a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of group meetings to get to know folks would be the most important thing, and then orientation to the major systems, budget, how we do positions, how we do human resources, and lots of fun information systems. Our human resources system and a variety of other information systems. So I think expecting a few months just to kind of get feet under you, and I don't think you expect to sort of grow the job around you over the course of quite a bit longer than that. I've been in this role a little over 2 years, and I am learning every day. So, but the role is also evolving every day. And the other thing I just want to say is we are an incredible organization with incredibly courageous people doing great things for the most vulnerable people living in Oregon. And we are a really, really cool team. And we don't always have our, we don't have everything situated in this massive organization the way we want it. We're constantly evolving every single day to get better. But I just never have questions about the people I work with. And so I'm glad you're interested because we're cool to work with. I know you want to talk, Teresa, about the process, and there was a question earlier in the chat about that, but let me just see. Are you able to speak
Yeah,
to
there is
investment
one more
and
question
change
there.
management? Why don't we hold that one and make sure we at least cover the process? Because I know everybody's going to want that, and then I can come back to the change management question.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do that. Yeah, and please let me know if I start sounding robotic or my internet gets on the way, okay? But can you hear me okay? All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen when this position closes, okay? Once the position closes, we are going to start looking at your application material. We're going to review it to determine that every single applicant that submitted an application meets the minimum qualifications. Okay, the minimum qualifications are listed in the job announcement. And this is a screening process that we follow with all of our recruitments within the state. Okay, so please make sure that you fully read the job announcement, that you get a copy of the position description, and you have it by you when you're updating your application material. You need to demonstrate that you have relevant experience. Like said earlier, there's set of skills that we're looking for. And a lot of that information that we're looking for is within the job announcement. You'll see minimum qualifications, which is the first screening. The second screening that we're going to do is to determine if applicants have the essential attributes listed in the job announcement. That's our second screening. And we're actually scoring your application material to see if you spoke in depth about those skills. So again, the DHS or the state doesn't believe in one-page resumes, and that is because your application material is being reviewed multiple times, right? To confirm that you are the applicant that we're going to hire that has all of the skills or most of the skills needed for the position. The third time your application material gets reviewed is if you're selected for the job. Like Seth mentioned earlier too, we will determine what your salary is going to be based on your relevant experience. This is why we said one-page resumes don't help us to fully understand what your experience is, right? Because we're looking for detailed information. So your resume, along with your workday application and your cover letter, will hopefully give us a good picture that you have the right experience needed for this recruitment. Okay, so we talked about those two screenings. We'll do MQs, we'll do screening for minimum qualifications, then we'll do screening for essential attributes. And based on who meets those skills is who we're going to be inviting to an interview. Okay, and we're going to start actually with VidRecruiter interviews. If you're not familiar with VidRecruiter, it's a interview platform where we post 2 to 3 interview questions. We send the link to the applicant, and the applicant has 3 to 5 days to record themselves responding those questions. A little bit awkward, right? Because you don't have a panel in front of you, you're speaking to the camera, but it actually makes it nice because you have, like I said, 3 to 5 days to get those recordings submitted. I'm gonna put the timeline in our chat, but VidRecruiters interviews are gonna be happening June 25th through June 30th. Okay, so a couple days before June 25th, if you're selected to move forward, you'll get an email saying, congratulations, you've been invited to these VidRecruiter interviews. Now, after VidRecruiter, we will be holding 3 more rounds of panel interviews. And the first round are going to be happening on July 18th and July 22nd. If you're selected to move forward, then you'll go to the second round of panel interviews, which are going to be Tuesday, July 29th. On Tuesday, July 29th, those interviews are going to be in person in Salem. Okay, so just keep an eye on that. And then the last round of interviews are going to be happening on August 8th. So I am sorry, but we will put you through 4 rounds of interviews for this recruitment. We want to make sure we get to learn about your skills, and these different panels will have people from our units. It'll have executive leadership evaluating your responses for each round of interviews. Okay. Any questions so far?
I
do
just
want to
want to
clarify.
highlight from what Teresa said, the most important thing to review in the job posting is those essential attributes. Everything that we do in our assessment process, which is multiple stages because we do get a lot of applications for positions like this, is designed to really hone in on who's got those essential attributes. And so getting really familiar with them and really reflecting before really, as you really consider this, is this me? And if those speak to you, then really those are what you're going to need to highlight. I believe in full transparency of exactly what we're looking for. And then the interviews are all, sort of slanted towards understanding those essential attributes. And so it's a little bit like giving the answers to the test, but it has to be real and genuine and based in experience. And so I don't have any problem doing that, but I just make sure you see those and think about those.
I just want to amplify. We don't normally do this many rounds of interviews. I know that like some agencies have really started to do this for everything. We don't usually, but this is already a very competitive pool, and the applications haven't closed yet. So we want to make sure that we are giving time to ensure that you all have the space to really show your skills in this and know that it's a good fit for you as well. So hoping that the opportunity is two-way once we get past the bid gruder. And also I put this in the chat, but just please imagine that someone is looking through your resume and using that as the sole piece of documentation to identify how qualified you are for this role. Also imagine this person is an HR specialist and has no idea about your work history or old or past environments. They're not going to be IT specialists. They're not going to be experts in facilities. Like plain language, make it very clear so that whomever we have on the panel, whomever is looking at this when we're in the final stages of selection, it is crystal clear how qualified and excellent you are for this role. And we don't have to do any back and forth on revisions.
Thank you both so much. Yeah. And like Maria mentioned earlier, right? This recruitment is very, very competitive. And so if you want to make any changes to an application that you already submitted, you have 2 options. You can withdraw your application, make the changes, and reapply again before the deadline, or you can update your resume and send it to me via email, and I will upload it for you. All right. And so, again, very important that you're looking at the position description, at the job announcement, and you're thinking, how am I going to transmit those skills that they're looking, right? Those essential attributes, those minimum qualifications from the job announcement. All
So I have
right.
a question.
Mm-hmm.
What's our policy on use of AI in the process?
Oh, good question, Seth. We were just talking about that earlier. Okay, so a couple of things, right? Um, there are multiple AIs out there, artificial intelligence tools, that can help you write your application material. It is okay to use an AI tool to help you draft your application material, but once you submit your application, you're done using the AI tool. Because if we notice or find out that you use the AI tool for like recruiter or any type of written assessment that we do or any round of interviews, you could potentially be disqualified. And so again, it's okay to use it to draft your application material together, but please understand that, let's say you're using ChatGPT, that's one of the writing tools, AI tools. Do not just grab whatever ChatGPT is giving you. Make it your own, because at times a AI tool, it's going to give you things that you might not do or that is not relevant with the work that you're doing. And so please make it your own, and don't ask a writing tool to write your cover letter for you, because it will come up with very generic information and it's not going to give examples of your work. Okay. So yeah, so there is that very good question said.
Yeah, it's having done some like everybody's putting everything into Chat GPT or Copilot or whatever these days, and it's fine to use as a tool, as Teresa said, but also, we've done interviews where it's clear somebody's reading an answer and we can tell where it came from, and it just it, even if it were allowed, it's not a good idea. Be yourself.
Yeah. And the good part about these interviews is that we're gonna try to send you those interview questions in advance, 1 to 2 days in advance, so that you can take time, right, to review the questions and come up with your responses so that you're not put on a rush, like we used to do before, where it was 15 minutes before you will get your interview question. So we're gonna give you more time than that. And so hopefully that will help you prepare some responses as well. The deadline, the application closes on June 18. Yes, you're right. June 18, Mary Rose, and it's in the middle of the night at 11:59 p.m. Please do not wait until the last day, because if you do, sometimes Workday has glitches and it won't allow you to submit it. If you do come up with any technology issues, as long as you email me before 11:59 p.m. on June 18, I can still count it for you and upload your application. Okay? Sid, Maria, any other thoughts on this or on anything else that we have covered?
You want to hit that change management question real quick?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were offering to.
Oh, I can. I was like, Seth's looking at me, isn't he?
I thought you were offering.
We're so well rehearsed. So I love this question because I love change management. And like most organizations, we're not as well invested as anybody would really like. But we do have some resources, and we're getting better. HR is actually in the process of working through some additional change management training. And we do have a change network that helps disseminate change through our local office structure. Our communications team is one of the best that I've ever seen and really do an incredible job with internal communications for staff. So we have some components around it. I'd say probably the area that we struggle with the most is just the the series of informations coming from executive leadership through, especially that middle management, which I know is troublesome in most organizations, to line staff. So there are certainly areas that we can be better and we are working on, but there are resources and supports, folks that you can lean on. I love being a thought partner. I'm even train the trainer certified, although I never get to really play in that sandbox anymore. Seth, what would you add?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say we're an agency of human service workers, social workers, and so we certainly care and try that everybody can come along with us. So we lean into the process. It's never perfect, though. I think on the hand went up, maybe.
All right. I want to be mindful of time, and I know we're past 1 minute, but are there any last minute questions before we wrap up our meeting? Well, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us, and feel free to ask any more questions via email. I did put that email address in the chat for myself, or reach out if you need a copy of the position description or any other information you might need. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, everyone. Best of luck
Thanks,
to you.
everybody.